Out of this, Asa Hutchinson joins us right now, a pretty good lawyer in his own right, the former governor of the state of Arkansas. He's running for president of the United States. Good to see you in the flesh.
Neil, it is great to be on your show.
What do you make of this?
First of all, it's very important because it draws attention to the lack of leadership from the Department of Justice level and oversight of the FBI. Whenever you're building a case on really inadequate information and wrong information, and you continue with that, that really reflects an agency that was out of control on that particular point.
But it must have known early on it was getting out of control, right? And it only realized, or this got out of control.
Well, many people have realized it's getting out of control in terms of the breadth of its jurisdiction. I worked with the FBI and all the law enforcement agencies when I was United States Attorney. I worked with them closely after 9/11 when I was head of the DEA and part of the Department of Justice. And what I've seen is that the FBI is strained in terms of the breadth of its responsibilities. They've got to focus on counterterrorism. They've got to focus on their traditional roles, but they need to be more limited, more focused, and more accountable. And so in my announcement speech 3 weeks ago, I said, as president, I want to reform the FBI. Good people in there, some of my kinfolk are part of the FBI. Good people, they should not be defunded, but they need to be reformed, realigned, and held more accountable.
This, comes at a time when the former president himself was hoping that this Durham report would be, and yield huge events, that this would turn the world upside down, so to speak. As damning as it is, outside of a low-level ranking FBI agent, cited for lying. That's it. That's the whole kit and caboodle right there.
Well, agencies err, and the FBI has done that. And this report...
But his prosecutorial record, that is Durham's, was lacking. It for whatever reason. He didn't deliver what many thought would be far more sweeping punishments.
Well, it's hard. I mean, most of those things have to be dealt with in terms of personnel and discipline and firing people.
So do you think anything else comes of this, Governor?
Oh, I think absolutely. I think it will lead to reform efforts. I think it will.
But anyone who lost a job or was fired, that's it. It's over in that regard.
I think that's over in that regard. Okay. Now we're looking at the institution of the Department of Justice and all of our federal law enforcement agencies. We have got such a labyrinth of federal law enforcement agencies, all with different missions, many times overlapping. The FBI has the broadest jurisdiction, and this is a serious issue that this report will give impetus for change. And it takes time to build that change.
Do you think it helps Donald Trump's presidential cause? That he has always said this, and now he's been borne out.
No, the problem, what we'll see, is that Donald Trump will use this as a means to undermine all of law enforcement, use it as a means to undermine our institutions that are so important in our justice system. For example, the trial last week in New York City rendered a verdict in our justice system that is the envy of the world, and yet we don't want a criticism of that to undermine the respect that we have for our civil justice system, our criminal justice system. And so that's what you can expect from Donald Trump, rather than serious reform and a serious effort.
You have mentioned some of the cases that are brought up, the E.G. Carroll one and the one before it on his financial proprieties that, yielded this indictment against him, that he's all but damaged goods, that he should step out of the race. He obviously didn't agree with that, and he's not going to take your advice. What do you make of that?
Well, he's not going to drop out, and obviously he's high in the polls because people believe...
Very high in the polls.
People believe that he was unfairly targeted by the New York district attorney.
Well, you agreed with that part, right? But what you felt like is with all of this drip, drip, drip of cases either now and coming, that it's just going to be a distraction?
Well, it is. I mean, and if you regard highly the office of the presidency, which I do, this is not the kind of debate. This is not the kind of focus you want for the campaign. These cases are not going to be resolved before the election is over with. And so such enormous
You would raise that in debates with him, right?
they will be raised, as well as substantive issues raised. Certainly.
Because Ron DeSantis raised another issue that actually you have touched on, Governor. That is the fact that Donald Trump, despite his political skills, has, lost a lot of races or caused a lot of races that were lost by Republicans. Easily winnable red wave that we didn't see because of some of his candidates. That's what Ron DeSantis is saying. Dating back to 2020, 2018, flipping a key body. What do you think of that? That Donald Trump, without mentioning Donald Trump's name, Ron DeSantis is saying he is a branded loser.
Well, that's not novel with Ron DeSantis. This is something that Nikki Haley pointed out. This is something that I have pointed out. This is something the American public is saying.
But American Republicans, right? They overwhelmingly have heard this too, right? And it's not denting their confidence among that core group in the Republican Party. Does that worry you?
Sure, and I think it goes up and down. So I think you're going to see a lot of volatility to those poll numbers in the future. I think he's much lower than that. But we'll see where that goes. But that's what a campaign's about. That's what raising these issues are about. That's what leadership is about.
But you and Chris Christie, as far as I can tell, who also might enter the race very quickly, Governor, are the only ones taking on Donald Trump to the degree you are, mentioning his name, going after him. That can cut both ways. You could lose those supporters of his, right?
Well, I think you have to be honest, and we want those supporters. It's very important to our Republican base and to win in November. But we also have to be straightforward that we can't win in a November election with Donald Trump leading that effort. We need to have new leadership.
In some of those polls.
We need to have new leadership, and we've seen what's happened in the last two election cycles, as pointed out. We don't need a rerun of that.
Governor, thank you very much. We're having a lot of breaking news, and you were kind enough to indulge it. Asa Hutchinson, the presidential candidate on the Republican side. There could be more. Actually, there will be more. The governor's already outlined that.